Hello and welcome back to Wild Earth Wild Chats. My name is Ben Southall, founder of Best Life Adventures. And today on Wild Chats, we're joined by Steve Jackson, creator of trail trips and events and race director behind events like the Wild Earth Coastal High 50. And today I want to dig a little bit behind the scenes of what it actually takes to build and run an ultra from the other side of the barriers. And from course design and safety to what first-time runners often get wrong and where trail running in Australia is heading to next. Hey, Jacko, welcome to the show.
Hey, Ben, good to catch up again.
Yeah, we've sort of got a history together in a way. My touch point in Australia was Hamilton Island, and that's where we really crossed paths for the first time. Tell me about Hamilton Island. Tell me about why you were there when I was there.
Yeah, so I initially went to Hamilton Island, as a lot of people do, just for a short stint. I was sort of in between jobs. I was changing towns because I'd sort of broken up with a girl and I needed to hit the refresh button and move somewhere different. And I was like, oh, yeah, a couple of months on Hamilton Island working in the gym there. That'd be pretty fun. So that's why I went there initially. And then after about 2 weeks, I was like, why would you leave here? This is like brilliant. I ended up being there for nearly 13 years. And yeah,
Wow.
of course, at some point in time, they ran a promotion for the best job in the world that they ran in cahoots with Tourism Queensland. And yeah, I remember in the office, I got a bit of a memo about all the candidates who were selected to be interviewed on the island. And I went to the pool that morning, the following morning, and there was a gentleman swimming in the pool. And we had a bit of a routine because there wasn't lanes for our pool on Hamilton Island. There was a gentleman swimming in the pool, and I said to him, oh, look, like there'll be a few people coming from our little tri club, and we usually swim down this way and then waterfall and come back down the sides. And he's like, oh, I won't be here much longer. And I said, oh, well, hopefully you'll be back a little bit later. And it was actually you swimming in the pool.
I've
then,
totally forgot this.
yeah, and so you hadn't been selected at that point. They were still doing the selections. Then later on that day, it was announced that you were the lucky candidate for that role. And
Wow.
a few months later, you started work in the best job in the world.
Yeah, and it was nice, Jacko, because we got on really well for the moment. I sort of saw you in the gym and I came down. I know that running is obviously a massive passion of yours. It has been of mine. You were and always will be percentages in the 10s and 20s quicker and faster than me for any of these events. So I was always sort of in your turbulence behind you thinking, oh, I'll try and be like Steve one day. He's a great runner. Yeah, I mean, that was our first interaction really, wasn't it? And since then you've obviously got on, we'll jump forward, Hamilton Island, the hilly half, the trial sorts of things. You were a founder of a lot of those events really on the island?
Yeah, my second day working on Hamilton Island, I had an event called the was a 100K relay event down in Melbourne. It was about 4 weeks after I started work on Hamilton Island, and I was like, oh, I need to just go running. I don't know how much distance is out there, but yeah, so I just went up on the trails and I went up to Passage Peak, which I'm sure you know well. And then I followed like a bit of a washed out route down to Southeast Head. And I went through this very heavily canopied at the time forest and then popped out in this forest of grass trees with this beautiful azure water in the foreground. And I was just like, man, this would be a cool race. And so that was kind of like where the seed started. And then a little bit later in the year when I knew that I was staying, I sort of hit my boss up about whether we could maybe put on an event. And they were like, yeah, you can do whatever you want on the weekends. And I was like, okay. So
Wow.
that was like how the Hamilton Island Hilly Half kind of got started. It was like a bit of an epiphany after running out to Southeast Head on Hamilton Island. Beautiful, sort of a remote part of the island where a lot of people now go for the big chair. I don't know if you've seen the Insta chair, but the big chair's out there. But it initially was sort of pretty tucked away and nobody sort of ventured out there. But it was just such a magic part of the island. And so many people went to the peak and saw the beauty from up there. But I was like, oh, this is so special and not many people are coming down here. But so the race was kind of a bit of a brainchild from that epiphany. And that's how I got started. And the very first hilly half we ran, I had 13 runners and 27 volunteers. So
the balance was the wrong way on that one.
yeah, but we got we're up to we sort of get 400 runners nowadays. So we're almost at 20 years. So we've got I think we're up to 18th edition this year. And
Crazy.
yeah, I'm still involved with those events, but that was the very first event. And yeah, I'm still grateful to Trader Pete, who actually saw the vision that I had for the event and came on as a sponsor. So I dropped a fair bit of money and learned a few lessons. I was in the office laminating arrows to put on trees and all those sorts of things. I look back now just in horror as I've evolved as a race director. But, you got to start somewhere. And I learned a lot in the first few years. And I was very grateful to Trader Pete and Hamilton Island Enterprises, who eventually came on board. And then a lot of
Mm.
my staff at the gym and my good friends on the island who kind of got behind it and supported it. And yeah, and the vision turned out to be true. And yeah, it's evolved to be a staple event on their calendar and something I look forward to every year with pride.
It's been I mean, it is a stunning view to get up to Passage Peak. If anyone's been up to the Hamilton Island, the view across the Whitsundays to Pentecost Island, across the Whitsunday Island, it is a really special part of the world. I remember being there the morning of the announcement of Best Job in the World. In fact, it was the morning after because I've been announced the winner. I got a phone call from the Sun newspaper in the UK. I remember doing a live media interview from top of Passage Peak and just thinking, this is nuts, because that was literally the start of now what is a 15 and a half year journey of being here in Oz. So I can
Yeah.
see why Tourism Whitsundays and Tourism Queensland decided to showcase this part of the world. And for you to have an event up there sharing that majesty of those, like you say, the azure blue waters and the grass trees, it's a really specky place. However, a hilly half marathon doesn't really come on most people's radar as the first event they might go and do. What is the elevation that you put into 21 kilometres on that thing? Because Hamilton Island is not in any way flat.
No, well, I mean, to be honest, the very first year we ran it, that hilly half was 17 Ks because I was like, that's going to be enough because it was like so brutal. The trail network there has evolved over the years. And now we've got some beautiful, stunning trails that sort of meander across hill faces.
Mm,
But you would recall at your time there, like all the fire roads, they used to just go straight up. The Passage Peak link was just stairs,
yeah.
uneven, washed away. Now there's like this beautiful trail to the top that sort of switches, lots of switchbacks across the hill. So yeah, the very first year was 17K. We used to run up and over to where Qualia is now and through One Tree Hill, which was just, that was all within 1K. So there was
Breaks
like
you.
just brutal terrain. Now we're up to like 24Ks because there's none of the views I want to get rid of. But yeah,
Mhm.
it's height. It's got some pitch in it, that's for sure. I mean, just
Pitch.
to
It's a good
leave the
word.
start and go to Passage Peak, you're climbing just over 200 meters in 2Ks. So that's sort of averaging at 10% gradient. So yeah, it's yeah, it's in the title though, so it's not like people are surprised. That's
No,
what they're
no.
getting.
And you can also add in Whitsunday's North Queensland humidity, because that really does have another bearing on it, that you're sweating from the moment you leave the start line.
Yeah, so we're kind of in May. We're on the May Queensland long weekend, so it's always like in that sort of fringe season. So you can get warm weather, or you can get some rain, or you can get like every now and again we've had a nice running day. But typically, you're right. It's hot and it's humid and it's testing, and it does throw the southerners out a little bit.
Rewind to Steve Jackson lacing up his running shoes in earnest for the first sort of time. Was it just a means to keep fit? Was it something where you were good at it at school, at little athletics? How did your career start?
Yeah, I guess as a child, I played lots of sports. My parents were very supportive, and I had two brothers, two sisters. So there's five of us. So I think the more time we were out of the house, the better for the parents. So yeah, we're a sporty. I played league and I played basketball. And probably in my early years, I started off doing little athletics.
Mm.
And my very first year of high school, where my journey with running changed. We had a local fun run. It was called, well, there's two, they both were on the same route. One ran into town, the other one ran from town to the beach. But yeah, we were doing the local surf to city, which was 11 Ks, and it went from Terrigal into Gosford itself. And the school that I was going to, the high school, I was in year 7. They said, "Oh, anyone who's running on the weekend, come and put your name down, and we'll put some teams together." We don't really see this much anymore, but they used to do things where you have a school team. They would add the 3 fastest from your school together to see which had the fastest school. And so I put my name down in the
Ah.
office and then went and did the fun run on the weekend. And I'm 11, I'm probably 40 kilos. I was good at sort of 800, 1500 at little athletics. My dad had taken me out a couple of weeks before and I'd done 8Ks in like an hour and 20. So I was confident I could do the 11. Anyway, race day comes, gun goes, run into town, and I finished the race and I'm like walking up and down the finish chute, like, where's my parents? Anyway, eventually I find them. And then as it turned out, I'd run the 11Ks in like 55 minutes and I'd won my
Jeez.
age group. And anyway, so they were like, "Oh, we weren't expecting you till like an hour and a half." So I kind of realized then I was like, oh, I enjoyed it and then it came easy to me. I was like a lighter frame. So I went back to school on a Monday and I put my time down at the office as we were instructed to do. I went to class and then I got a call over the PA system, Steve Jackson report to the office, which is like
I'm
sends
in
a
trouble.
hush over the crowd. I was pretty well-behaved boy, so I was sort of like a bit scared. I went up to the office and there was a gentleman there, a teacher in year 8 who I hadn't met before. His name's Paul Marty. Paul's still with us, and I still keep in contact with Paul. But essentially, Paul was a year 8 teacher who was into running, and he said, "Oh, is this your time?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh, that's pretty good." And I was like, "Oh, one of my age group." And he's like, "Oh, do you like running?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I do little athletics." And he's like, "Oh, would you like to do more?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah." And I was up for anything. And then, so he reached out to my folks, and offered to like collect me on Saturday mornings and take me to a running group called Terrigal Trotters.
Yeah.
So, he used to pick me up at sort of before 5 every Saturday and drive me out there and we'd run. And then run clubs have really changed now, but back then it was mostly blokes and mostly sort of 30 to 60, I guess, some a few years older than that. But so they used to run sort of between 8 and sort of 15. This group's still going. And then on Sundays, it was like a smaller group called Wombi Whoppers, which is out of a suburb called Wombrel. And what they used to do their Sunday long run, which is kind of pretty standard
Mm.
across the running world. And then on Wednesday nights, they had an event called 6 at 6, which was essentially like park run. It was 6Ks at 6 p.m. every Wednesday night. You'd turn up, they'd record a time, you'd pay your 50 cents, and away you go.
Well,
And then I was hooked then. It was really helpful and supportive. Probably like a year and a half later. So now I'm like just turned 13, and we were coming up on Anzac Day, and he said, "Oh, what are you doing for Anzac Day?" And we were in a coastal town, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know, probably go to the beach with the boys or whatever." He goes, "Oh, do you want to do a marathon?" And I was kind of like, I was into running enough to know it was a big deal.
yeah.
But all my friends, who were all 30, not probably closer to 45 to 60. They're all like old salts, like just, pumping out marathons like they were nothing.
Mhm.
Anyway, so I was like, oh, well, if my friends are doing it. So he said, oh, I'll ring your folks. And my folks were sporty, but probably they weren't runners. And he sort of said, oh, look, we're going to go down next week and do the Anzac Day Marathon in Sydney, which started at ES Marks Field and sort of ran through sort of like Botany and circled back. Probably can't do that run anymore because it's a little bit busier. But so anyway, he took me down, and he had an older brother, Tony, who was a heavier set guy than Paul, and he was like probably going to run sort of 4:15. And he said, "What? Just run with Tony." And I was kind of like, "Okay," I'm sort of oblivious to the distance, and so we run to halfway, and I'm a speedster now. I'm like another 18 months into running. I'm running sort of sort of 35 for 10K. I didn't weigh anything, and I'm sort of feeling like I'm just running in treacle. So I said,
Yeah, being held back to Tony.
yeah, I'm like, oh, I feel fine. He's like, still 21K to go. And I was like, yeah, am I right? He goes, well, off you go. So yeah, so I run off from 21 to 35. I'm passing people and feeling $1,000. And anyway, we get to 35, and like this piano falls from the sky, classic wall scenario, lands on my back, and I'm like shuffling and sniffling. And then I had another guy come past from the club, and he's like, "Oh, how you going, Jacko?" And I was like, "Oh,"
I'll
you
get
know, like
through.
so, like sports nutrition then was a banana, and
Yeah.
there was no such thing as gels or sports drinks or anything like that. Gatorade was probably just popping up. Yeah. So anyway, long story short, he gets me home. I run 3:38 when I'm 13.
Wow. Wow.
Paul sits me down in the car. We get back to the car. I can still see the car. It's like a Volvo, brown in colour. He sits me in the back seat and he looks me dead in the eye and he says, "Steve, if you can do a marathon, you can do whatever you want with your life." And it changed everything for me because,
Wow. What a moment.
yeah, it still sits with me, still makes me a bit emotional. But so we
Yeah.
go back to school and they announce it the next day and that I'd run. And he said, "Oh, it's like running the Surf to City, the 11K, 4 times in a row in 55 minutes." Was a bit, and so like, everyone in the classroom just like most people couldn't even do one of those. And it was just like, it just turned me from like this tiny little kid that was a pipsqueak in the back of the classroom to somebody that had something special about them. And I
Yeah.
was from like a big Catholic family, and life wasn't easy. And but my dad had worked for the same business. He'd worked for Australia Post his whole life. His dad had worked for Telecom his whole life. Nobody had gone to uni. Nobody had sort of done anything. I ended up sort of making some junior teams for a couple of different sports. I went to uni. I've traveled. I've worked in different places. Like, it just changed everything about me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm very grateful for just opening up my mind, not so much about the running. It's taken me to some amazing places, introduced me to amazing people, but it was more just the change in like, yeah, just the mindset change and what
Yeah.
was that other things were possible rather than just, getting a stable job. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but at the time it was like, it was a real mindset shift for me and changed everything about the way I approach things. And so a lot of the stuff I do now is a bit of a pay it forward, sort of pay it back kind of.
I love this because I've known you for a long time. I've not known any of this side of things. It's always like there's Steve, the good fast runner who organises things really, really well. And that's the Steve that we all know. So to have this insight is really, really beautiful to do it. And it seems like, in a way, you've sort of been gifted with the ability to run well and run fast. And that then carried you on and on. And you sort of kept doing it from a competitor's perspective rather than any organisation.
Yeah, early on, I was just a runner, and I loved cross country. It was probably my go to. I ran track as we all did at school and things like that, and I did well there. But I probably beat more people that I would lose to on the track in cross country and on the road. So yeah, and obviously again, I had that network of older friends from trotters who used to do road races, and I did the 6 foot track as my first,
Yes.
and I was 15, so that was just on
Right.
the weekend. And that became a bit of a race that I look forward to each year, and I end up sort of getting up in the sort of top five. And by the time I was sort of 16, 17, but yeah, about the same time I was playing another sport, and yeah, I kind of end up going down that path for a few years. But I was always kind of, yeah, running was my roots, and when I sort of stopped playing basketball, I sort of returned to running to keep fit, and it was always my passion. Yeah, when I moved to Hamilton Island, it was like a real kind of therapy to start something new and
Mm.
get into it.
You sound like yeah, same sort of pedigree as Lucy Bartholomew had her on about 6 weeks ago, and it's just that whole thing about when you get involved in something early on and you get the passion as an early teenager, you really sort of use it to empower you throughout life. What podium you get to, or whatever it's just ran, or a DNF you get to, it just empowers you to feel like you can do more and you can achieve more. And I think that's so across the board for whatever level of runner, road, trail you are as a human.
Yeah, I think so. And you're right. I think it's just sort of instills something in you. It stays with you. And it's funny because it's sort of helped me through when I've been flying in life, like I've been flying with running when I've been low, then I've used running
Yeah.
a bit of a tool to bail me out, I guess, like it's an escape, but it's also, again, it keeps you honest, but it also drives you because you're always sort of holding yourself to a certain level, whether that's training volume or intensity or a goal time or a goal race. Just recently, I did the Old Ghost Ultra in New Zealand. And the last, probably since moving to the Gold Coast, I've sort of immersed myself in organizing things and had a difficult time through COVID. So, yeah, so midway through last year, I'd reached out to Old Ghost about doing a tour for trail trips and offered to volunteer. And the
Yeah.
gentleman that's the race director was a bit of a kindred spirit, actually. I really like him. He said, I want to just have a run because we don't talk about it more. And so I was like, oh, you know what? Like it was a good carrot because, and I'd sort of said to people, I was looking for something to both scare me and excite me to get back into a regular running routine for myself. So yeah, so I just did that. And again, running was kind of like a bit of a carrot to get myself back into shape mentally and physically, and then hopefully that'll spill over into my work life and family life.
Yeah, there's a lot of the mosquito flying around me. There's a lot of mantras about just the space that it puts you in. I think mine is a de-stress thing that I do. It's when I feel like, work is getting too hard. If I can rely on myself to haul myself out of bed at 4:30 in the morning like I do, to get back before my boys out of bed, that sets me up well for the day ahead. It's such a nice conditioning tool for your mental headspace and the physicality that comes with that, the endorphins, the serotonin, the running. Do you find you enjoy now trail more than thumping tarmac, or is there a nice balance for you?
Yeah, it's probably a balance for me. And when people ask me this question, I always say that I prefer to race road but run trail. So
Mm,
like if I am in that space where I'm like, okay, I want to get back into shape and I want to get to a point, there's something, the objectivity of the road scene is like really helpful for that. So I'm like,
yeah,
I'm not going to get back to the times I was running in my youth, but I'm like, okay, well, I would like to feel strong and run well. And that right now looks like an X on a half marathon course.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I'd rather run trail 9 times out of 10 just because I enjoy the setting and you're in the present because you're just concentrating on what's immediately with you.
yeah,
Whereas on the road, like you say, you're pumping out Ks and watching splits and, like you're
yes.
aware of where you're running. Whereas on the trail, you're literally just concentrating on what's immediately in front of you. So that's my answer, is that I prefer to race road and run trail. if
I
that
like
makes
it.
sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It makes a heck of a lot of sense. When it comes to sort of data, obviously the way that we have become almost slaves to the watch or the ring, and we look at our body dynamics and we look at our metrics and we constantly work out our diets. In the early days of you running, did you find there was less control, more freedom, just to be able to run because you love running and you're a young kid who just had the spirit?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we just all ran on feel. I remember getting to uni and I was sort of doing sports science, and I by that stage I had like a coach, and we did a little bit of heart rate stuff, but it was mostly just feel. Like you would, yeah. I had a a normal watch, a stopwatch, but we definitely didn't have a smartwatch. And that was like overkill. Like really, it was like you knew,
Yeah.
especially in your suburb, you knew like that was a 15K loop and that was a 20K out and back, and that was a 400-meter section, and so you just you just kind of knew it, and yeah, it is interesting to see the evolving nature of running. And I have a social event that we do every year called the Goat Loop Guessing Game, where
Mhm.
people have to run naked, so they run where their watch is hidden, so they can still record it for Strava, but they have to guess what time they're going to run the Goat Loop, a 7K loop in the rainforest
Love
app.
that.
And it's funny how people like it freaks them out.
Because they can't attend to something and they can't
Yeah,
see their
yeah.
splits.
So I think, and yeah, I still think there's place for that. And I think on race day, there's definitely people that hold themselves back because they're holding themselves to a pace that they believe that that's all they're capable of, or that's what they
Yes.
for. And there's always more in us, and there's definitely days where you're going to feel good, and you need to go with that. And yeah, I think that that's probably one thing that's changed a little bit. Like we've seen pacemakers at marathons, and obviously you've got your watch, and we are data driven, and you've got Strava, and so you're referring and comparing and all those sorts of things. But I think, yeah, there's still a little bit in there for people to just embrace racing, and whether that's
Mm,
racing the clock or racing other
that's,
people, but more about racing a perfect execution. There's so many moments where like people are like, well, that's too quick. And you're like, is it? Or are you just
yeah.
having a really good day and go with it?
Yeah.
And you know what happens if you blow up with 3K to go, but you don't die wondering. Whereas you get to the finish and you're like, "Oh, maybe there was more there." So
Mm.
yeah, it's a great tool, the data, but it's also, I think, really helpful for people to just let it go and just get out there and run to feel. So yeah, I guess I'm showing my age, but yeah, I've lived
No,
through.
I just think it's nice. There's DJs. You see DJs these days that have events now where they do not allow phones to be lifted up because they want you to be in that moment. And I think that is that rebellion against the beauty of digital is that we can work as individuals, a pairing, a team, or a community to better ourselves and the people around us, but also to be able to strip that back and go back to the basics. It's almost like you're taking away the phone, you're taking away every bit of digital technology to just be in the moment as much as you can, and that brings out beautiful conversation. Have you ever been an earphone runner? Have you done music? Because I never
Never,
do now. No,
never.
never.
And like obviously I coach a group and some kids, and I never discourage people from wearing it. If that's what gets you out the door, then go
Mm.
for it. But for me, it's been about leaving the noise behind. So I reckon I can count on like two fingers how many times I've run with headphones. Just
Yeah.
treadmills is probably not much further ahead than that.
Yeah, I think we're the same mentality on all of this. So okay, so Hamo, you're doing the hilly half. You bring in on Hamilton Island again. You've got the triathlon there, which is some of the most iconic images I think I've ever seen of a triathlon, which you sort of put down to long open roads. To see some of the images of bringing triathlon bikes onto the runway at Hamilton Island, that was a massive, amazing event. You must have sort of helped create there.
Yeah, so I was very fortunate. I had good support from upper management at Hamilton Island, but we had sort of loosely talked about the triathlon, and I had a woman in my running group, Karen Handy, who I'm still really good friends with, and her partner Kieran was the GM of the hotels, and you would remember Kieran.
Yeah.
And we went down and we sort of started dabbling in triathlon. I've done a little bit as a youngster, but I'd always sort of wanted to tick the Ironman box off. So anyway, so we were dabbling a little bit, and we went down to Noosa for the Noosa Triathlon, and obviously like an epic event, great location. And we'd sort of been banding around like whether we could do one on Hamilton Island. Anyway, Kieran had come down for this trip, and he was sort of blown away just by the color and the energy. And Kieran's a
Nice.
serial hobbyist photographer, and just loved it. And he was like, we were sort of sitting around at lunch post race, and he was like, we could do this. I was like, yeah, we could.
Yeah,
So we get
nice.
home and he's like, oh, like put together a course. So we're kind of like, oh, it's going to be hard to get distance, as you know. So like, what's up? It's going to be a loop course. Anyway, I was like, could we use the runway? And he's like, it's our runway. So anyway, so we broached the subject with the managers of the airport, and they're like, well, like you could put in, I think it's called a NOTAM. So essentially, like that, any airport is always available for emergencies. So if
Mm,
an airliner was in trouble with a jet or a plane, then essentially they could land if they needed to. But essentially, you can put the airport out of operations for a window of time with this NOTAM permit,
love
essentially.
this.
And we worked with the charter company there, the helicopter company, and they're like, yeah, cool, that'd be great. We can work around that. So yeah, so we got the airport, and so I sort of concocted this sort of 6.5K loop, which I think is arguably the best bike course in triathlon. It's got some technical stuff through the resort. It's got the TT section on the runway, and then
Hmm.
it's got a couple of really punchy climbs. And it's 20 Ks where you have to, and a bit like I talk about with the trail running, where you just have to stay present. You have to have some skills like, when do I change gear? When do I get out of the saddle? When do I hammer? How hard do I go with the wind on the runway? How much do I fight it on the way back? Because runways catch wind usually in one.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you got a lot of help one way and not so much coming back. So so we built that, and then we built a run course which went through the marina and out to the beautiful yacht club that sits on the headland there, and back and finishes on Cat's Eye Beach. So yeah, it was like just a magic. And then obviously we're swimming in just the Coral Sea, which is, you can't go wrong. We do have to pick the date because it's a tidal beach, as you would recall. So the
Mm,
tide has to be right. So we have
sucks dry on big days.
so yeah, so we have to make sure we time it right in the calendar. But essentially, we're like, yeah, this is a great time. It was a really strong triathlon scene in North Queensland, so we worked together with like Ellie Beach Triathlon in Bowen and Townsville and Mackay, and tried to put it in the right spot so that we could all complement each other. Again, and again, we started off the very first year. We had like 80 people, and it was just, and we tried to tick the box when we set it up. We talked about all the good things that we'd seen in triathlon. So having like ITU style racking, so individual racks, and like a little gift at the end, and like just stuff that you don't see at every other race because they're commercially driven. And the race,
Mm.
essentially, if it's got people on the island, it's doing its job. So the race has a low entry fee, has a couple of really nice touches that are individual. So on those racks, we have a magnet with next year's date and their actual name. So they can take it home and put it on their fridge and
Oh,
remind themselves
yeah,
about.
nice.
So yeah, so we've kind of tried to do all the things that would make it really memorable, personalized, and it's boutiquey, I guess, and sort of sits. And we've had some amazing athletes there over the years. We've had Courtney Atkinson, Craig Alexander, Ashley Gentle, Josh Amberger, Ryan Fisher. We kind of have a bit of a routine where we invite a male pro and a junior female, and the next year we flip it.
Hmm.
The Grangers, we're just, the honour board there is just amazing. Emma Jeffcoat was with us last year, and so an Olympian. So yeah, with Jacob Burtwell, so I could go on. It's sort of one of those races where you're like, wonder if you'd like to come to Hamilton Island, and people are like,
It's not a hard sell, is it? It's not a hard sell at all.
where do I sign? So yeah, and then we talked about, well, if people are going to come all this way, then maybe what if we pair it with a swim? So we have an ocean swim the next day, so people can double up, or we just have people come for individual, either the triathlon or the swims. Yeah, as a weekend in mid-November, it's just a beautiful time to be in the Whitsundays, and yeah, the race is really unique in lots of ways. And I think if it's on your bucket list, you should keep it there and tick it off at some point.
Are you still doing the run on Whitehaven? Is that still part of the calendar?
It is indeed, yeah. So, and I can't take all the credit for this, but Glenn Burke, who was the CEO of the island for many years, he used to live. He's a Manly boy, grew up in Sydney, and there was a Manly Soft Sand Classic, which is a run on the beautiful Manly beach. And he came to me about, oh, like, what do you think about this? And I was like, sort of huge demand for the soft sand running. And I said, but we could do it on hard sand, because Whitehaven Beach again is quite tidal, not quite as tidal as Hamilton Island, but quite tidal. And the fine silica sand that makes it so white is really hard packed when
Yeah.
the tide goes out. So I was like, we could maybe do a run on the hard sand. That might be a bit more appealing. Plus, we'd already had the hilly half, so I didn't want people thinking I was nasty.
Just bruising them.
I was like, oh, what sort of events have you got? I've got this brutal half marathon, this brutal triathlon. Come and run
Numbers are
the top
low.
10.
The price point is high.
So yeah, so we went over and I got dropped off and we kind of measured out what we could run. And so we were like, well, up and back's essentially 10 to Hill Inlet. We left a little bit of beach for the tourists at the end. So we sort of start up a little bit to the west, the northwestern end, and we go out and back. And presently we do it twice for a half marathon, and we have a 10K, a 5K, and two shorter kids runs. There is a new trail on with Sunday Island
Yes. Yes.
for the
Have you
Narrow.
run this yet? I did a bit of the consulting on where we should do, how the trail should be set up. It's beautiful. It's stunning.
Yeah. So what I would like to do, and it's open, but what I would like to do is drop our half and
Yeah.
have point to point run on the Narrow Trail.
Yeah. Amazing.
Use all the same services and so we're just obviously waiting for things to settle down. But I've sort of broached it with Parks, and obviously they've got a new tender operator that's running the walk there.
World
So
Expeditions out there, yes.
the discussions are on their way, but I would love to see a run on that trail, and we would
Oh,
do Whitehaven Beach run on the same day.
I will sign on the dotted line immediately when that one comes out. It's so lovely because obviously the Whitsundays are so iconic. Whitehaven Beach is so iconic. The view up Hill Inlet is so iconic. But until you get up to Whitsunday Cairn and you look back down Hill Inlet from a different view, it's almost Jurassic in its view. It's that green of the forest, that blue of the inlet getting wider and wider. I think I saw it at one of the highest tides as well. So it's it is drop dead gorgeous up there.
Yeah. So this is a bit of a side story, but I got married while I lived on Hamilton Island. And for my Bucks party, I'm not a drinker. So the boys are like, oh, what do you want to do? And I was like, can we do this? So we actually hired a boat. The water sports guys, the Harley brothers, looked after me, and we hired a boat, and we actually went and walked the Cairn and sort of did like the Aboriginal caves, and then went over to Whitsunday Cairn and then hiked the Cairn and back, and then hiked the other peak, Sunday Peak. And that was and then the boys had a few on the boat, obviously, but I was having Cokes and chalky milks.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what, because like just that view, like you say, is just so impressive and iconic. And when I saw that this walk had been proposed for Whitsunday Island, I was just like, oh, this is going to be epic. So yeah, I'm really excited to see that open, and I'm hoping that we get another look at it individually by having an event there. But we'll see. We'll see how that conversation goes. Maybe you can put in a word for me.
Honestly, wish you all the luck on it. It is stunning, and the toilet's obviously there on the route as well. So you've got all these nice little transitions and stop points as well. So yeah. So do you reckon you consider yourself? I mean, at those days, Hamilton Island days, you're starting to become a race director. You're doing things that are more sort of commercially faced. They're about doing something in conjunction with Hamilton Island. You a race director at this stage, or a gym manager still?
Yeah, so I worked in the gym for a bit, and then Kieran, the GM of the hotels division, was actually talking to me about how we wanted to make Hamilton Island more family friendly, and whether we could do more free activities, things like bingos and the trivias and all those sorts of things, and expand on that program. And despite my huge frame, I'm not a massive gym guy. And we had an amazing assistant manager at the gym, Claire, who's still
Waterson.
So it was a good opportunity for me to move to probably something that was more aligned with my passions, and Claire would take over the gym. And I think the problem I have with race directing now is that I actually started in the Hamilton Island setting where it wasn't commercially motivated. It was more about showcasing the island and the islands, the Whitsundays, to a different audience. So we did lots of things like I talked about with the events, where the event basically has to wash its face. And then after that, obviously, the island generates income through hotel stays and restaurant visits and activities and stuff like that. So my problem is now I'm still trying to run events with all those little touches. I don't have the support, but I have to try and help feed the families. So yeah, it's been a bit tricky one. So yeah, it was always just a side gig for me. I loved doing it, but more because I loved the island, and I loved that it was more than just swim up bars and getting hammered. It was showcasing the green side of Hamilton Island. And so, yeah, I wasn't really a mindset around the race directing stuff. It was more just about sharing what I loved about Hamilton Island. So, yeah, definitely. And then, so I moved into activities, and that kind of dovetailed. And we got park run started there. So you can do park run up on Hamilton Island to this day. So that's another thing that, I wanted to see brought to the island. So, yeah, at the time, Tim Oberg was looking after park run, and he not long later moved to the area, actually, and he's still up that way. But
isn't he? I've run with him actually up in the Early Beach one.
So it was interesting to see it evolve. But yeah, I never actually kind of went down the race director route, and I kind of stumbled into it when I got onto the Gold Coast as well, because I didn't set
Right.
out to be a race director when I moved here either. I worked on the Commonwealth Games initially, and then I was just doing some hack work. I was writing for a magazine and just trying to piece together an existence. The very first event that I put on down on the Gold Coast, I'd gone out on New Year's Eve. I'd moved here in November 2017, and I'd moved here. I'd taken my kids, who were quite young at the time, albeit, and we'd gone out to Paradise Point, and the fireworks were like 9 p.m. Parking was a nightmare. People were messy. I was just like, oh God, it's just not
I
my
don't want.
thing. And so I'd gone home and I was like, what if I could do a run? What if I did a run like twilight, something nice? And we had some ex Hamilton Islands friends who worked at Royal Pines here on the Gold Coast. And I went to them and sort of said, what do you think about this? And they're like, oh, yeah, we could give it a go. So yeah, Abby Coates, I don't know if you remember Abby from the events team, and Jarom Rolfe from AV Partners. Anyway, they
Mhm.
were like, yeah, we'll support it and we'll give it a shot. So yeah, so I put on an event more because it was close to where I lived and it was more my thing. And a lot of people were like, New Year's Eve, who's going to do that?
Exactly. We're about to get tanked up. Why would we go running?
So anyway, I was like, well, I said, oh, I reckon people will come, build it and they will come, as the saying goes. Long story short, I put on this event. It was like just under 300 people the very first year. It was
Wow.
three distances, 4, 8, and 12K using the golf course park. Twilight fireworks, food trucks. And yeah, it was kind of like, yeah, that was cool. And that was a nice thing to do for my new hometown, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of how I started. And then I ran into a mutual friend, Benita Johnson, as it goes, but Benita Willis, as a lot of people know her. Yeah, so I went to Benita and we bumped into her, and we were bemoaning the lack of cross country in the Gold Coast. There was lots of Gold Coast, Brisbane-based cross country events, and there was a Sunny Coast series at the time. And she's like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
there's nothing like that here." And I was like, "Well, maybe I could do something on the side." So I started a series called Flirt with Dirt, which was meant to be
Mhm.
cross country for the kids and intro to trail for adults. And that was sort of like my next sort of side gig. And then the boys from those guys' events, Chris and Matt, had Coastal High, and they sort of came to me and they'd actually spoken to me about their Southeast Queensland trail running series, but I wasn't in a position, especially to afford it. Especially with COVID, I was just really struggling. So yeah, I said I'll just pass. But then they came back to me later because they'd hung on to the Coastal High, and they'd gotten to that point in their lives where they were like, "Yeah, we're kind of done with that. Would you like to do
Yeah.
that?" I was like,
Yeah.
okay. And just prior to that, I'd run a tour on Hamilton Island in the Whitsundays with Martin Lambert, a good friend who runs the On the Run Mackay store.
Mhm.
And we'd run a little mini tour on Hamilton Island for trails. And that was kind of like good fun. So I was like, oh, maybe we could do trail trips. So I'd spoken to Chris and Matt about trail trips, and they were like, oh, we kind of did a couple of events and then we haven't done it since. And I was like, do you want to sell it? They're like, well, we don't really have anything. So they were like, well, I was like, well, you've got the website, you've got a database, and you've got the networking. And they're like, oh, well, we paid this much for the website. Why don't you just pay us that? So me and Marty were like, okay, let's do that. Let's start a little
Yeah.
tour business. And we were like, okay, so we sort of bought that off the boys, and that was sort of our initial foray. But we hadn't really got to the point where we're running anything yet. And then Coastal High came up, and the boys were like, we'd love. They're very passionate about that event. It was their
Yeah.
baby, and I
Yeah.
think there's some synergy there between the way that we saw running and its value to the community, and the way I delivered my little events. So they were happy, they were okay, comfortable that I would do a good job of the custodian role for Coastal High. So they reached out to me, and I was like, oh, this could dovetail well. If I've got an event, then we might get people along to the tours. And so we sort of said yes, and we scraped together not an insignificant amount of money, and bought Coastal High. And that was about a month before COVID.
Yeah.
And then my foray into full-time race directing didn't start well. It was quite a difficult period because I'd paid the boys some money, and then I had no income. That was quite a difficult period, and we'd just bought a house. Yeah, so it was quite a trying time. My wife is a masseuse, and a very good one, and she was qualified to the point where it was an essential service, and so she was
Still
going.
running.
And I'm still very indebted to her, both financially and emotionally. But yeah,
For
but
getting
basically
through that window.
we got through that. period of time. And yeah, and I'm sort of still getting to the point where we're kind of paying all these things off. But yeah, essentially that was kind of how I got into race directing initially. And now it's become a job because I was like, well, I need more events if I'm going to do this
Hasn't it? And
real.
that's the portfolio. That's the amazing thing that sort of happened with that is Chris Van Hoof is my next door neighbour. So I know
Mm.
Chris really, really well, and the passion he had for that part of the park up there and the event and the community it did. So you've obviously taken that sort of baby that was trying to be delivered at a very tough time with COVID and then grown the portfolio of all the events. And luckily I have the border track at the end of my road here, my driveway, so I know it very well. But that's sort of the foundation. The Triple Crown is now the foundation of what you deliver to a Gold Coast community.
Yeah, I've got a bit of an interesting portfolio because I've got that beautiful trail series, the Triple Crown, which has got, obviously the jewel in the crown is the Coastal High. But then I also have these community events like the Resolution Run, which is still going and is my largest event by
Mm.
far. And I have like a Halloween themed run, and I have some relay events, which are really about that sort of running community and also the younger community. And then I've got like sort of the hardcore kind of trail scene, which has got some introductory races as part of it as well. So it's a diverse portfolio, but
Yeah.
again, harking back to the story of my youth, I do want to support that sort of grassroots side of the sport and the fun side of the sport and the family side. But then obviously, yeah, I love trail running and I love the community. And so I've got those sort of iconic events that, yeah, hoping to continue to put on, but grow and support the sport, I guess.
And there's also the other side of it is the trips, and that's the big part that attracts me is where can I go and run that's not my own backyard, and have a holiday, a working holiday in a way, but a holiday where you can take people to share a beautiful destination, and that must be exponential growth really for these destinations. Where wouldn't you want to go? Where do you go?
I think it's part of the problem with trail running in general is like there's so many great places. There's races popping up all the time because there's like beautiful forest and bushland here in Australia and around the world, which is people starting to recognize the value in putting these events on.
Mm,
And the same goes for the tour side of things. It's like, well, now we can take these anywhere. And at the moment, I have like a core set of products which sort of stays centered around like the big events like UTA here in Australia, Kosciuszko, Tarawera. They're the kind of like my core products. But I'm trying to introduce now that we're kind of coming out of the flip side of COVID is like I'm trying to
mm,
introduce like a bit of a rotation where I have bespoke races. So a couple of years ago, we went to Squamish 50-50 in Canada. Last 2 years ago, we went to Japan. This year, we're going to do our first Vietnamese race as a tour. So yeah, so we kind of try and broaden the mind of runners about other events in this space. Next year, we'll do Old Ghost because I loved it so much. Yeah, so we're trying to introduce that. As amazing as these big ticket races are, they're beautiful pockets of running in all parts of the world. And the more I can showcase races, which is probably obviously similar to the Coastal High, it's more of that community feel, local pride, and showcase some of those races as well, and broaden people's horizons. That yes, it is amazing to run in the Blue Mountains and the Snowy Mountains and the beautiful forests around Rotorua in Tarawera, but there's so many magic spots in New Zealand, in Australia,
mm.
in different parts of the world. I'm hoping to do. I've got another Hamilton Island friend who has a sailing tour business in Croatia, and I want to do like a trail,
Yeah.
showcase that part of the world. So yeah, so this idea is bubbling away, but I've just got to find a way to turn it into a workable, profitable kind of business, not just what they want to do next.
And when you talk about, the company, is it you? There are other people that help you out with it? I mean, obviously you've got quite a team on the ground on race day, but when it comes to the building and the inspiring and the creation of the ideas, is that Steve?
Yeah, it's just the sole operator.
Yeah.
Well, I've got multiple personalities in my brain, I'm sure. So plus my
It
so yeah,
helps.
essentially it's just me. I'm the only person that's and paid's a loose term. I've
Yeah.
got an amazing wife, Ebony, who's very supportive and helps me. And my sister-in-law is my bookkeeper, and she at present is not taking any pay because she can see on the books there's not enough there.
Yeah.
I have it's an amazing network of friends. And one lady in particular, Sharon Sutton, who's kind of just been my 2IC, and another lady, Tiff Stevens, but Sharon in particular has just been amazing. She's just been super supportive, and she's come on tours as like camp mum and things like that. But she's at all my events, and she's like running the registration tent. slapping me around the face when I need it. Just yeah, and there's a whole host of my friends who you would have seen at all the events who are just there at the start and the finish, and some of them run, and some of them just give up their runs to help out. And
Yeah.
I'm super grateful, and there's probably too many to mention, but certainly I didn't want to let some of those ladies go. And there's been some people since V Apps and Pete Sinfield, Luke Johnson, and Ben Kelly, and the Kelly brothers, and there's just like a myriad of people. But there's other people dotted throughout that sort of small timeline that have probably saved my sanity and saved some of my events just through their giving attitude. So I'm
But I think, Jacko, you build community, so community come to you. It's the nice thing about it. It's not just about forced karma. It's just about the fact that people love being around the event and you create the event. So I think it's really just natural that people gravitate back in. But I do want to dip in your head on the Coastal High because it's obviously such an iconic event. I've been lucky enough to be in it 3 times now. I'm going in again this year. It's brilliant. It's really good. From a how to minimize the trouble of logistics, you certainly pick your start point of how you get people up there. Things that concern you as race director on that first day, because everybody arrives in a car park, everybody's bussed up, no one really stays up there. It's definitely a tough start box, isn't it?
Yeah, look, the boys started this event, and when I took it over, I was like, "There's got to be an easier way." And I have introduced the second bus that leaves from Nerang. So we have 2 essential start meeting points, and then we bus them in. And that's part of our permit is that we have to get everybody in by a bus. We can't have people drive up. And I was like, "There's got to be an easier way, or maybe there's a better spot to start." Or and I kind of that second bus location is as far as I've been able to chip away at it. But it is logistically an incredibly challenging race and expensive to deliver race between the buses and just the volunteers and like ranger hire, permit fees, all that kind of stuff. It's a nightmare, but and I sort of touched on that word before about being a custodian. It's just such an iconic course. And that's the other thing is like, could we just do a different route, use a different part of the amazing Gold Coast hinterland? And yeah, I could, but just the magic of that, like the
Yeah.
cliff top running on shipsterns, the deep rainforest, the Gondwana rainforest that you go through, and the waterfalls that you pass. It's just even
And you need the waterfalls in that last 5K because by that stage you've climbed the steps, your body's broken, the cramp is on the verge of taking over. The waterfalls are the mental resolution that justify being there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, like, I was like, "Oh, do we not do apple tree stairs?" For those that haven't heard of Coastal High, it's like a 50K point-to-point run, and there's a set of stairs at just on coming to marathon distance, which is 900-ish stairs, and it's brutal is my coin.
That's a nice phrase.
Both beautiful and brutal, this section of forest, but you are literally climbing, like a vertical K essentially. And yeah, it's just at the wrong time of the race. And then just to add to that, there's like another section that leads to the stairs, which I think gets forgotten about. That rolling section through
Yeah.
Woonongoora ground, which is just tough. There's like adds another couple of, really pinchy climbs. So I think that's what knocks people around the most on top of the stairs. But yes, but you're like, well, no, that's just part of the folklore of the event, So it is what it is, and I can't see me changing that route while I.
No, don't. I think you summarised it nicely. I mean, at the start, as you leave that chute and you climb for the first sort of kilometre and a half, 2 kilometres up the road, it's like a knuckle down, buckle in. We're on a bit of an adventure day here. It's probably not if someone's going to go and do their first 50K, yes, iconically beautiful, it's going to test them seriously.
Yeah, I mean, they're guaranteed 2 PBs. One for the first ever 50, they'll get a PB at Coastal High, and then the next race they do, they'll PB because tough 50 to start with. But yes,
Yeah.
it's an initiation for sure into trail running.
How do you think? I mean, COVID was a massive spike for the purchase of bikes and the outdoors world. It really was a great thing to get people outdoors. How do you think the trail running community and the building of races is going across Australia now?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's so many. I think now people go running in the bush and they're like, this could be a cool race, and that's how I started. I said that exact phrase, on Hamilton Island. And a lot of them really are or could be. I think, once you dig a little bit, it's like, okay, you need a staging area, we need parking, we need access and things like that. So it's never as easy as people kind of think. But yes, there are some more amazing routes out there. And I think that's why we've seen a proliferation in trail running events. I hope that we don't cannibalize ourselves, like that we get to the point where we're like, yeah, no, we can manage this. And I think the other thing that I've started to see, and we've got one this weekend down at Washpool, is like those club level events, which are run professionally, but by a group. As it turns out now, it's the Coffs Harbour Trail Runners Club, but essentially they're running it just to cover their costs and
Yeah.
maybe bring a bit of fundraising into the club. So they're not running it commercially. And that's like, and there's another one in Byron Rainforest Run down in the Byron hinterland, which is put on by Byron Bay Runners. And I'm sure there's other events right around the country that are put on by clubs, which has kind of really died from the road scene. But I think because they're not dealing with like traffic management and things like that, that it's not as scary to do from a club scene. And I think that's the other great, I mean, it's competition for me, but I think the more people that are out enjoying trail running, then everybody wins. And so I'm all for them. So yeah, so this sort of mid-level kind of events, brilliant.
Yeah, I think when people get into running, it's always the whole, I'll aim for my first 10K and then I'll give it up. And then a month later, you go, oh, I might just do it. Maybe I'll do my 21. And you do that, and people evolve and you see them grow. That first step from being a marathon runner to being an ultra runner is a massive one. If someone is going to start their trail journey and they've gone out and they've run for 5 or 10K and they've got in their headlights a long way down the road of 50K, what is that journey? What do they need to be thinking about as a sort of first time marathoner, ultra runner on trails?
Yeah, and I think we're going to see a lot of that in the next 18 months. We've obviously seen this huge boom in road running, and I
Mm,
think it's that type of crowd that will be like, well, what else is out there? That they'll
yeah.
love, the road scene for a bit, but then they'll be like, oh, a trail and ultra trail will be really appealing. Yeah, and I think, to be fair, I think the journey into ultra trail is a lot easier than ultra road running because it is accepted practice to kind of like hike the hills, that it's okay to walk. And the other thing is that you're not time driven. When road runners come to
Yes.
trail, they're like, oh yeah, how far is it? Cool, I'll be done in an hour. And then they're, because it just doesn't correlate. And you can do two trail events a week apart that are both 10-ish K and be 30 minutes
Totally
different
different.
because of the
Yeah.
terrain and the footing. So yeah, I think part of that journey is just accepting that it's accumulated time on legs. I think I'm a big time on legs kind of guy. It's embracing the hiking and just, and as you get fitter and you get into your trail running journey, the hikings become less, but they also become more powerful because at the start they're probably a trudge, let's face it.
It's
Like,
just to get to that top.
yeah, but then as you get fitter and stronger and, whether you use poles or not, all those sorts of things, you are actually, it's a tactic. It's an energy management tool to get you to the finish line in the best possible shape. So I think really it's just, yes, embrace it. Look for those sort of like milestone events. So it's like, yeah, so even at Coastal High, which originally was just a standalone 50, we have the Crunch, which is 28 Ks. So now I think, like we look at Southeast Queensland Trail Running Series, they have short course, long course, in the Raw, my first event in the Triple Crown, it has 4K and 25. So you can start to plan out, just as you would on the road to build to a marathon, you can start to plan that out. But there'll always be people that are just going to jump in boots and all and just go, yeah, this is my first go. And it's going to be, I'm doing park run and I'm going to do this 50 up in the Gold Coast hinterland. And you're like, yeah, well, just adjust your mindset. Just throw the watch out the window and just, manage your energy and make sure you eat enough and drink enough.
And that, I mean, that's the biggest part of the learning anyway. It's not about being able to grit your teeth for long enough just to get through. It's about all of those new skills that you learn through your hydration and your nutrition and your feeding and your blister prevention, all those sorts of things. I remember a guy, it still sticks in my head. I was filming with Brett up at Blackwell 100 about 8 years ago. And there was a guy who was hobbling around with about 10K to go. And he says he's never run more than 20K. And this is his first 100 that he got and done. It was just like, this is crazy that he would take that step from I've done a half on the road to going and trying to do something as big as that. But there are people out there that just want to go and try it.
Yeah. And, like, whilst I wouldn't recommend it, like, I don't want to discourage it altogether either because, that's ultimately we're about encouraging people to get out of their comfort zone and live,
Yeah.
like really live. Like, what does it mean? And get out in the bush and all those sorts of things. So I would never like say, oh, yeah, yeah, just jump in. But I would never say don't. Like, if somebody's like got a
Mm,
twinkle in their eye and they're like, yeah, I've been thinking about doing coastal, and I'm like, do it. Sign
lock it
up,
in.
because you'll never regret it. Like, yes, you will learn some lessons, and maybe you knock it out of the park. Really rare, obviously, but if you don't, that's part of your journey. Like, they're the things that it's the misadventure that makes the adventure, right? You know,
Totally.
we talk about stories like, like it was like the time that your bag went missing and your gear didn't turn up,
The time
or
you fell on Coastal 50 and got a new scar, all those sorts of things. Yeah.
those things. Exactly. They're the ones you remember. You're like, how did that race go? And you're like, oh, it was really good. Yeah, like it
Yeah,
was
no one
hard.
talks about the num races. You know, you've got to have the highs to have the lows. You've got to have the lows to have the highs. What are your thoughts on there's the new evolution of sort of styles of racing as well? You know, the backyard ultras, you got the teams, marathons, those sort of things coming in now. It's sort of keeping things fresh and keeping things different.
Yeah, I mean, so I was, we're talking about doing my first marathon at 13, my first ultra at 15. I'm 53 this year. So I've been around a long time, probably seen a couple of running booms, but I think the diversity is one like really exciting. I coach at a school, and I try to talk to the kids about running's more than cross country day and athletics day. There's
Yeah.
junior park run. And actually, we just had a cross country camp last weekend at Talabudra, and I brought in James Blanton to talk about his experiences with running. And he started off as a track athlete running 400s, and he's now doing backyard ultras and one of the top guys in Australia. But it is, I think, that diversity is so important, like for keeping things fresh. I think the one thing that like, I have a few relays, and I've got the unbroken relay in a couple of weeks' time, which I'm doing with trail trekkers. But yeah, I think that diversity is really important because just every now and again just re-energizes you. There will
Mm,
always be people that can just, like they'll just stick to what they know, and that's all they need in their life. But, I think society as a whole now, I talked about my dad just working for the same company his whole life, like we don't see that anymore. We don't see that in work. And so I don't think we should see that in running, even if you just test the water. I've always been a road runner. Go and do a trail run. I've always done, shorter stuff. Try a backyard ultra. I think it's really exciting because either it can refresh you, it can remind you or re-energize you, but it also can renew your passion for what you've always loved. Because even if you went and did a backyard ultra and you were like, yeah, it's not my thing, but it reminds you what your
gets you
thing
back
is.
into the thing. Yeah. Yeah.
So get out there and do some different things. Like one of my events that I've not got to yet, but still on the bucket list is the Warwick Pentath Run. It's like you run marathon, but over 5 events. So there's like a 1,500 meter, and there's a half marathon, and there's a 10K, and there's a 5K, and by the time you do all
Keeps
five,
it tests you so much on different levels. I love that idea.
yeah, so it's really cool. So I just think, like some of these slightly interesting quirks on standard running
Mm,
events, really good for individuals, for their running experience, but also for the sport, because sometimes those different events, appeal to a different type of runner. So, or a different type of personality too. Because some people are like, yeah, I can rise and grind out through a backyard ultra, but if you said go and do a mile, so yeah, so I think I love it.
interesting. So you've obviously run now all these different levels and styles and distances and sport forms of events. What on race day gives you, Jacko, the greatest satisfaction?
I think, it's so funny. I just coached this morning, and the kids were doing a practice cross country run, and I talked to them about, giving themselves a score out of 10 for how well they executed their run today. If that
Yeah.
was today, would they walk away and go, yeah, 10 out of 10, paced it right, felt strong, moved when I should have, made the pass, do all that, like got my nutrition right, all those sorts of things. And I think that's what I still
Mm,
chase, is that amazing feeling of like, man, that felt easy. I like felt strong the whole way. Or if I got in a hole, I found my way out of it. So just
yeah.
being like a great race. And it doesn't have to be perfect in terms of like, yes, I ran really well the whole time. It might be like I was in a hole there and I dug myself out of it. So I think for me it's that execution. I'm chasing that
Yeah. Yeah.
action of like really doing a really well run race, whether it be like an ultra where you have to juggle, like you say, the nutrition, the hydration, the walk strategy, all that sort of stuff, or if it's a fast 5K and you just like, yeah, just came easy today. I just felt good, and like so and so was just up the road and I ran them down. Like, yeah, so
Hmm.
which is great because now for me, I can apply that feeling, what I'm chasing, in any style of running. So I'm chasing that well executed race.
There's no such thing as a bad run. I think it's the one thing that is always, whenever you do it, if you got out the door and you put your shoes on and you tied them up or lace them up, whatever you do. There's no such thing as a bad run. It's always the way I think about it when it's that hard time of getting out of bed and it's a bit achy and it's raining and it's a bit grey. Just go out and do it, hey? And
Yeah.
what's coming up on the calendar? What's the next things to look forward to from you and the team?
Okay, from a personal point of view, I'm going down to the Buffalo Stampede in a couple of
Yeah.
weeks, which is a very technical run, a lot of vert, which is not my
Yeah.
thing, but I'm going with some good mates and I'm supporting some good mates. So I'm really looking forward to that. So my running year is that Gold Coast half on the road and then Queenstown Marathon, which is this beautiful blend of trail and road. I love that race. And so I'm going back to do that. So that's me from a running point of view. From a execution point of view, I am delivering Unbroken in a couple of weeks on Easter weekend. I'm super pumped about this concept. So we'd been handballed and approached by Redlands Council to put on an event in their council area. And I was like, oh, another running event, really? But I'd been to an event called Ragnar many years ago, which was teams of 8 running in like a traffic light system where you'd go out and each time you'd run a different coloured loop. And I loved it. It was camping overnight, but it was 8 people. It was a lot. It was only 25K in total, which was probably not enough. And my good friends had delivered it and I'd spoken to them about how much we loved it, but they weren't doing it anymore. Could I tweak it and deliver it under a different name? And they're like, yeah. So I went to my friends who had just started Trail Trekkers and we were like, they have like a fast packing kind of product where they hike in or run in and stay overnight and then hike back out. And I was like, so this is camping and running. So this is kind of more your thing. And I've already got enough events and I love you guys. And what do you think about this? So it's teams of 4 or 2, so you can do an ultra marathon, and you run 3 14K loops. They're 3 different loops, so it's a different experience. You run, and you have to run unbroken as a team through the night. Essentially, it's set up to run 1 loop Saturday afternoon, 1 loop through the night, and 1 loop Sunday morning. And they
Yeah.
all running a marathon each. And you're camping or glamping right on the course. We've got a school hall, showers, hot showers, hall for cover and big screen to put the footy on. So every time you come back, you've got 3 people from your team just hanging out, plus
Yeah.
3 people from every other team. So, which it's just trail running to a T. It's all about community and good fun and getting out on the trail. So I'm pumped about that. So that'll be the first time we do it. It's a smallish field, but I just think it's going to be one of those events that just gets into people's skin and it'll grow. So looking forward to that. And then not long, I'll be back up on Hamilton Island for the hilly half. So I still go back there each year and do their 3 event weekends. And then I've got the Triple Crown. So in the Raw, Border Bolt, Coastal High. So that's kind of like my next sort of few months. So really looking forward to getting them out there and getting more people out on the Gold Coast hinterland.
I cannot wait. I'm super excited as well. I actually messaged Buha and the World team yesterday. I went, this Unbroken thing, you sending anyone? I might put my hand up for that one. So I'll talk to them about that one. But also to be able to have that stuff that goes on so close to home here, to have, I'm in Currumbin Valley, and obviously to have those 3 events almost in the proximity and spitting distance of here is beautiful. I appreciate what you do, Jacko. I appreciate the friendship that we built over the years as well. It's been fantastic. You also do the thing that's on the Monday of every month, which is the Sunset Slice down at Wild Earth as well.
Yeah, so we do a shop run, which again
Last Monday, sorry.
Yeah, just about building that community every month. Ando does an amazing job. So it's one of our elite runners here on the coast, but he's very laid back, Brazilian guy, and he's fantastic with the crowd there. And he's built like a really great little Sunset Slice communities. Like even if you just come for a run and some free pizza, it's a good way to initiate some friendships. And the one thing about living here on the Gold Coast is like it's so geographically spread. So I think more of those community events you can get to, you can find people to run with in your space. Because like I can put on a Gold Coast Trail Runners event at Currumbin, but anyone that lives at Coomera is like, oh, I'm not going down there. So I try and move around, and Wild Earth obviously have their monthly Sunset Slice, and it typically gets people from around that southern part of the coast, which is fantastic. So yeah, but I think if you can get to one of those, you might find a like-minded person who lives in your neck of the woods, and you can start to learn some new trails and get out there. But yeah, it's a great thing to look forward to every last Monday of the month.
Can you direct us to your website, to the platform? Where do we find out? Where do we book? Where do we get inspired?
Yeah, so my website's just trailtrips.com.au, and I have like a drop-down box of my events and a drop-down box for my tours. So people can just get on, have a look. You can drop me an inquiry. And then I've also got my like local running group, which is Run Central. And then locally, I'm sort of like the admin for the Gold Coast Trail Runners. So You can reach out to me on the Gold Coast Trail Runners page, and yeah, and that page is there just for people to use as a bit of a platform for themselves. So again, as I said, people can just jump on the page and say, look, I'm going out on Sunday in Nerang. I'm going to run this bar. I'm leaving at this time. Who wants to come? And hopefully, again, we can build some of those friendships and community in the Gold Coast space. But yeah, and hopefully people are copying that everywhere.
Steve, you do an amazing job, Jacko. It's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you for taking us into your early days behind the scenes and for sharing the practical side of what you do as a race director and building the community, which is the essential part of bringing everyone together and getting back what you put in as well. So for everyone out there who enjoyed this chat, hit follow and share it with someone else who could enjoy a little more rad adventures in their life. And if this is your conversation that's got you started thinking about your next run, your next event, and your next day out on the trails, check out worldearth.com.au for all the gear and fuel you need. You'll find the people in store that know all about it. They're the experts that know about shoes, about running packs, about hydration, about everything else. If you want to get down to Sunset Slice, the next one is at the end of the month. And we will see you next time for more wild stories from the trail, the peaks, the road, and the edge of the map. Thanks, Jacko.
Thanks, everyone.